where we've had 6 fatalities.
Raging wildfires sweeping across Maui have now killed at least 36 people.
96 people are confirmed to have lost their lives.
Death toll surpassing 100 now.
111 people now confirmed dead in the Lahaina wildfire.
Wildfires in Maui that have now killed at least 114 people.
As you could probably gather from the title of this video, we're going to talk about one specific aspect of these fires.
We're seeing video of what could be an early trigger in the devastating Maui wildfires. You can hear a witness describe a flash that could be a tree falling on a power line.
It's windy and then there's a flash, and I think that's when a tree's falling on a power line.
One expert saying those videos taken inland from Lahaina show the flames spreading and may be the first evidence of downed power lines igniting a fire.
We've got that video of that kind of explosion, that arc flash, and we've got 10 sensors in that community that show a very sharp drop in electrical voltage at precisely that same time.
Power line just went down.
And early Tuesday morning in Lahaina, Shane True using a garden hose to battle a fire that he says appears to have been caused by a downed power line.
That whole place was just engulfed.
Authorities declaring that brush fire under control around 10 a.m., but then lost control of the flames hours later when the winds caused a flare-up to spread. By 5 p.m., Lahaina's historic Front Street up in flames.
And once I saw that, I remembered that this has caused fires in other parts of the US. And so I went to go look for some articles, which I'll put all the links of below in the description box. But as I was looking for ones about California, these ones about Texas popped up. One from 2016, Texas wildfire in Big Bend National Park blamed on downed power line. And one from 2011, Texas wildfire likely caused by power line sparks. California's second largest wildfire was sparked when power lines came in contact with a tree, and that was known as the Dixie Fire. Pacific Gas and Electric, California's largest utility, has been responsible for wildfires in recent years that destroyed hundreds of thousands of acres, several proven deadly. One of the biggest fires started near Sacramento in 2015 when a tree that PG&E had failed to maintain hit one of its power lines. The fire covered more than 70,000 acres. 2 people died. That's between 28,000 and 29,000 hectares. In 2017, 4 fires erupted in the Napa area when trees hit PG&E's power lines in several locations. Some of those fires fed into others, in total more than 100,000 acres, so around 40,400 hectares, and 1,475 structures burned. In 2018, near Paradise, a live wire broke free of a tower that was a quarter century past what PG&E considered its useful life. What followed destroyed nearly 14,000 homes and killed 85 people. It was the most destructive wildfire in California history. The title of this is How PG&E Ignored Fire Risk in Favor of Profits. Over 1,500 California fires in the past 6 years, including the deadliest ever, were caused by one company, PG&E. PG&E pleads guilty on 2018 California Camp Fire. Our equipment started that fire. And now obviously I have to go through Australia. Here's a few that I found, starting with one from the start of 2023. In my state, on the Eyre Peninsula, Port Lincoln properties damaged in bushfire caused by failed power infrastructure. And then to one that was in February 2022 in Western Australia, there's Western Power charged over WA bushfire which tore through Wheatbelt and killed livestock. And then back to my state of South Australia, victims launch a $150 million legal class action against SA Power Networks over Cudlee Creek bushfire in Adelaide Hills. And then on the York Peninsula, in my state, same fire season, SA bushfire that damaged 11 properties caused by a power network fault. And then back to 2018, Tathra bushfires, New South Wales Rural Fire Service says power lines likely cause. And then back in 2017, Tarago fires, bird on transmission line spark bushfires. that was near Canberra, and now to Victoria. Back in 2015, tree falling on power line blamed for starting Burrawatha fires. And you go back another year, you find another class action lawsuit. In WA, Perth Hills bushfire class action claims power pole that started blaze was in deplorable state. 2013. This is from another lawsuit. Cutting down single rotten tree would have saved 194 homes in 2013 Blue Mountains bushfire. And here's the last one I have for you. Black Saturday bushfire survivors win $494 million in record class action settlement. Alright, now this video isn't gonna just be me pointing out a fairly obvious problem. We're gonna discuss some things that can be done to help reduce things like this happening. Using the examples I just went through, help highlight some things we've learnt from past events. Alright, we know that equipment for electricity needs to be maintained. They need to be repaired or replaced when they get too old or damaged. And it can't just be the wires. It has to include the things holding the wires up. Can't be like what Western Power tried to do to the people that live in Perth Hills, with the lawyer representing the people saying that Western Power's position was that its obligation ended at the top of the poles. And speaking of Western Power and top of the poles, here is a video I have to include in this from May 2023.
Thank you to the Minister today for taking my grievance on pole top fires. Pole top fires are becoming an increasing menace in my electorate of Roe. The report reveals that 382 pole top fires occurred in the reported years of 21-22. This was by far the greatest cause of failure performance in structures throughout the network.
So I didn't know that pole top fires were a thing, did you? That's a bit terrifying, and goes to my point here of I'm pretty sure an expert needs to come and inspect this equipment on a fairly regular basis. It can't just be left down to like what they try to do in that court case and blame it on the property owner, because when you think about it, what are they meant to do anyways? Of course, members of the public should be able to report faulty poles and wires and equipment and stuff because it's a safety hazard, and it should be very clear on who needs to be contacted and how to get in contact with them and what to do in the meantime. That should be made very clear to everyone. But to say it's the responsibility of like the landowner to have it fixed, what are they going to do? They're just going to have to call the power company anyways. So to me, that's a huge cop-out. Now, this is the actual pole, by the way. I thought I would mention that. And so I think it's a reasonable request of having routine inspections of the power infrastructure for any maintenance that needs to be done. Call me crazy. I think that's a good idea, especially if you have the potential for the top of the pole just catching on fire without any damage to the pole and it falling, or a tree falling on it, which brings us to our next part, from pole maintenance to now falling trees. Got to maintain those trees. Got to keep an eye on the ones that are close, that have potential to fall on them or have contact with power lines if the potential can be that catastrophic. I got to quickly talk about the one that happened in my state, in an area that I've spent a lot of time in, so literally hits close to home. And I learnt some things that are pretty insane. Let me just read a part of this article for you. An independent government report concluded the fire start was due to a tree falling from outside the vegetation clearance surrounding power lines, and the SAPN had acted in accord with its bushfire and vegetation management procedures. Equipment setting. Now this is wild. This is absolutely crazy to me, because here we have the guidelines for trees near power lines for South Australia, and this is from 2016, so I would imagine this is what was relevant. It's pretty detailed. I'm pretty impressed. It's got all your different heights for your different poles and for different areas. So here is the bushfire zone one, and the government report is telling us that the tree was somehow out. Fucking how? It almost mathematically doesn't make sense. How? Was it on a hill? What the fuck? But that's not the craziest part, right? This is the most infuriating part. It said South Australia's energy distributor knew it was a catastrophic fire danger day with a total fire ban in place, and yet we see in the Office of the Technical Regulators report that the fault mechanisms were adjusted to normal settings, and quite alarmingly, the auto reclose device operated twice, so it de-energized the line and then re-energized it after the tree fell on the line and brought it down to the ground. We're going to have to talk about what auto recloses are. I came across this Energy Networks Australia bushfire fact sheet from January 2020, and in their technical solutions section here, they have listed auto recloses. Let's have a look. Most overhead line faults are transient. This could mean a branch contacts power lines but then falls off in high wind. An auto recloser will open when a fault is detected and then attempt to reclose after a pre-programmed period. If the fault has passed, such as the branch falling off and no longer making contact, the auto recloser will close and power will be restored. Oh yeah, there's more. If the fault has not passed, it will open again and continue the cycle of closing for a set number of times. This technology improves restoration time for customers, but in high fire danger, the opening and closing may cause sparks at the fault that could ignite a fire. Before the start of the bushfire season, networks will change the protection settings on auto reclosers by reducing the number of attempts to 0. The recloser will open when a fault is detected and will need to be manually closed after assessment by a network crew. This means longer restoration times. It will reduce the risk of fires. So there you go. It seems like they must have had this on the wrong setting. And I also didn't know about this technology, that depending on what season it is, you can have it on the setting to prevent a bushfire or the setting to start a bushfire. Did not know about that technology until I decided to make this video. Very interesting. There you go. Now, you might have noticed this link here. I did too. Okay, it seems to be a study titled "For Resilience and Reliability for Electricity Networks." And I just want to show you a few things I found in here. Bushfire risk is increasing due to climate change, with research indicating that the forest fire danger index in Australia will more than double by 2050, and the fire season is now longer than it was in the 1970s. This means that managing the fire risk posed by operating electricity networks on an extreme fire weather day is becoming more challenging, and new approaches are needed. And then this bit, be prepared. Typically, governments and critical infrastructure providers focus on responding to an incident after it has occurred, trying to manage the event and its aftermath. International agencies encourage an approach that supports risk reduction and preparedness. There is evidence to show that every dollar spent reducing risk prior to an event replaces the $4 that would need to be spent on recovery and response. It points out what I would think is obvious of spending money now to make problems less of a problem will mean you have to spend less money on the fucking problem. But I'm glad I found this before I finished making this video, because it ties in nicely with the final point I want to make, which I wanted to loop back around to the start of the video of ideas for Hawaii as they rebuild after this tragedy. Because now, with the every $1 spent reducing the risk prior to an event replaces $4 that will need to be spent on recovery. With that in mind, we're going to talk about burying the power lines. Now, searching on the internet for the pros and cons for burying power lines versus having them above ground on poles, you'll mostly come across it's cheaper to have them above ground, but they're more vulnerable to wind damage, snow damage, and damage from trees. It also mentions things like when they're below ground, it's more aesthetically pleasing, but the biggest issue is it's expensive. And so that's why I'm talking about this after mentioning that every dollar spent to prevent a problem saves $4 spent on recovery. I just wanted to put this out there because I would imagine it would be even easier to start to do a project like this if you have to rebuild this infrastructure. I know I don't have to win over people that have the same view as me as just wanting to do whatever will prevent this from happening again or keep as many people safe as possible. But not everyone is like that. Some people have very different motivations. Partly why I try to make videos where I go through as many arguments as I can. So thanks for watching. Hope you learnt something new. See you next time.